I am Megan, and this is our blacksmith, Mr. E.J. McCann. Funding for Rebirth PL grants has been provided by the National Endowment for the Humanities, the NEH, and administered by the Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities, LEH, as part of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or CARES Act, Economic Stabilization Plan. Additional funding is provided by the Union Pacific Foundation. Welcome, Mr. McCann.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, that's what I like to hear, some participation. I am E.J. McCann. I run 3 Nail Forge in Buller, Louisiana. If you haven't heard of Buller, you haven't been to the greatest place in the world. Buller's southwest of Kinder, Louisiana. I do run a blacksmith shop there. I do teach leisure learners blacksmithing from McCann State University. The pandemic's not going on. And also, I'm the head blacksmith at Kent House Plantation in Alexandria. My wife usually accompanies me. She does blacksmith a little bit. She mostly tends to the fire for me to make sure I'm not burning the metal. This is coal. This is not charcoal. You cannot barbecue over this because it emits sulfur fumes and the impurities that's in coal. This can get up to 2,700 degrees. I can literally melt the end of this rod off if I leave it in there cranking the blower. People say, what do you do? I do all kind of different things. A few examples on the table over there. Various things from pine cones to plantation. The wooden board you see with a spike in it, that is a replica of the nail that they use to nail cheeses. 3 Nail Forges on a regular basis. Business. What I'm doing right now is I'm putting a point on the end of this rod. What I did, I took a 3/8 rod and I just put a point on it, okay? When that metal is hot, red hot, it is just like molding clay. I can mold it. One of our mottos as a blacksmith is we're the master of the metal. The metal doesn't tell us what to do, we tell it what to do. If it doesn't do what we want it to do, we put it back in the fire, get a little bit hotter until it understands I am the master. I have 2 grown sons, 146 and 144. When they were coming up, I used the same technique on them. If they didn't do what the master said, I warmed them up a little bit and then I reshaped them and they turned out to be very successful young men. I do all kinds of different things out of my shop. The process I'm doing now is called fullering down. What I'm doing is I'm reducing the size of that stock. You can see I've reduced the size of it. Okay? I've done that for a purpose. You're going to see as it unfolds the different things that I'm going to be doing with that piece of metal. I do all kind of different type of work. I do ornamental ironwork. I don't do big long fences or anything. So I do custom gates. Just finished the gate for a lady in Lake Charles, an attorney, and she loves Halloween. Okay, so I built her a spider web gate with a full size spider on it. Okay, she was in love with it. I'm glad she was. Still reducing that metal down there, and I'm just what we call in blacksmithing isolating that glob in the. You can see how I've isolated this piece of metal here because I'm looking for some mass. I need some mass to do what I'm going to do. Now when I come out of the fire, I'm going to flatten that mass out, and I'm going to begin to shape it. And you're going to know what it is as soon as I smash it out, or I hope you do. It doesn't take long. Once I put the metal back in the forge, to get it back up to forging heat. And I'm just drawing the edges out on this block. If you notice, I'm turning it. That's helping me get a certain shape. I can actually work on the back side right now also to get that shape. And what do y'all think that's going to be? L-E-A-F, L-E-A-F.
Looks like a leaf.
A leaf, all right. Correct answer. A lot of people think when I make a leaf that it's an arrowhead or a spearhead or a, I don't do weapons. I do some knives. The knives that I make are made out of railroad spikes. I don't know what happened. I had one I was going to bring. I guess I left it sitting on my wall. Blacksmithing or metal smithing is one of the oldest professions. It's mentioned in the book of Genesis. Tubal-Cain was a blacksmith and metal worker. I often get asked, how did I get into blacksmithing? I'm a pipe fitter welder by trade. I've been welding for 45 years. I know I don't look like I'm old enough to have 45 years experience, but I've always manipulated hot metal. And when my oldest son graduated from college, I was trying to do too many things. So I had to take some irons out of the fire. And so I started concentrating on blacksmith, developing a shop, and going from there. I got one of the best equipped blacksmith shops in southwest Louisiana. What I'm doing now is I'm rounding where I drew that metal out to make the stem for that leaf. There's many different ways you can decorate a leaf. You can do the traditional veining, and that's what I'll do here. I'll let it get hot again, then I'm going to go ahead and get my tools. You'll learn as a blacksmith very early on that you need to have your tools on the anvil before you get there with the hot metal. Because once that metal touches that anvil, it's a heat sink, and you got 3 to 4 seconds to actually do what you need to do. So. This chisel that I'm using is a Blacksmith design chisel. It's rounded on the edge and not just square. I made it. It's made out of a leaf spring out of a 1986 Toyota Corolla station wagon. And the reason I remember it is my son hit an 8-inch pine tree with that car and totaled it. And we're very blessed that he's still alive. He don't like me to tell that tale about the chisel. Make a lot of our tools, a lot of our punches, and different things we do make. We make them out of coil springs. We do make our hammers sometimes. Our tongs, we make tongs. So a blacksmith, we make a tool as we need it. People say it's you get real hot, huh? Well, I mean, yeah, you get hot blacksmithing, but I get hot gardening and I get hot cutting grass. And it just depends on what you really like or want to do. So now I've got that leaf where it's looking a little more like a leaf. When we reproduce items, from nature. We're not trying to make them look exactly like a leaf. What we're trying to do is to get it as close as we feel like we want to. And there's no doubt when you look at that, you can tell that's a leaf. I have some examples on the table over there of different leaves up there. Anything from that block over is for sale if you're interested in buying something. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to get some body into that leaf. And so I'm going to put this fixture in. This is about an 85-pound anvil. The one I use at home is 300 pounds. I'm just thinking I can't use that device because I don't have enough hands. But anyway, we're going to do something. I'm going to bloom it off of this block right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hammer on the back side of that leaf on this wood. You see right here how it gave it some body. Because a leaf in nature is not just flat. Hey, how you doing? You doing all right? All right. Did you want to touch that?
No thanks. I'm good.
Sometimes I demo to students, and one student say, give me that leaf, give me that leaf. And I said, well, all I have is one leaf and there's 20 of them. So you think you should get it? Yeah. I said, how about if I give it to the person next to you? Oh, they don't want that then, you know. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put on what we call a cutoff hardy, and it's actually just a chisel that I can hold in my anvil, and then I can chisel this thing off because I want to work on that stem some. So, what you try not to do is cut it all the way off and then hit your hammer on this tool because it dulls the tool up. Often get asked also, do you ever burn yourself?
Probably.
And my answer to that is if I don't burn myself at least one time during the day when I'm blacksmithing, I don't feel like I've accomplished anything worthwhile. Normally when I'm blacksmithing at home, I don't wear a long sleeve shirt.
If you weren't wearing regular glasses, would you wear protective eyewear?
I wear these glasses right here. I should wear safety glasses or something. Because if you notice, when I come back and hit on this anvil, there's some black residue. Okay, we call it slag. What that is rust. Whenever you introduce metal to heat and oxygen, it produces rust. Now, if I ask you what color rust is, what color would you say it is? Most of the time we say it's kind of red looking. Well, this is jet black. And something else about this slag or rust, it's actually harder than the metal that I'm forging on. So if I have any of that residue on the anvil and I hit a piece on it that I want to be smooth, it actually will start to put an impression on the back side of it. And so sometimes we use that to our advantage. If we want to put some texture on something, we just collect some of that slag and then heat up the piece of metal and sprinkle the slag on the top of it and hit it on the top. Then it'll put some texture on the metal also. What was the main purpose of a blacksmith during the plantation times? He was the most important craft. Because if the butcher needed a knife, where did he go? To the blacksmith. If the farm hand or the field hand needed his plow sharpened, where did he go? Went to the blacksmith. If the owner of the plantation needed a new candelabra for the dinner table, who made it? The blacksmith did. If the seamstress needed some new scissors, who made the scissors? The blacksmith did. So when you look at it all, you know, the cook, if they needed a new fork or spoon or anything, where did they go to? The blacksmith. So when you look, I had talked too long. Oh yeah, see it sparking? I disintegrated that metal. So that nice little old stem I was developing is no longer there. And you can see, you can also see, I heard it sizzling, that's why I jumped. You can also see where it melted on the backside. So when you've worked making something other than a leaf for several hours and you burn it off, it's disappointing. Also, as a blacksmith, we do not only decorative leaves and stuff like that, but we do general hardware. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to demonstrate the making of a handle for a barn door. This is a piece of flat bar, and sometimes when you're working by yourself, that you need some help. So blacksmiths have various tools we use. This particular tool is called a smithing magician, and it allows me to be able to put a piece of work in here and hammer it from the top, holding the hot metal, working from the top. This is bituminous coal. Bituminous coal is a medium grade coal. It lights fairly easy, and it gives us the BTUs that we need. Most of this type of coal comes out of the West Virginia, Pennsylvania area. We get it shipped in by the ton, and then a friend of mine in Cairn Crow sells it. Right now, I'm just kind of putting a point on the end of this flat bar. But if you notice, when I hit this away, it's thicker, and if it's wide enough, it wants to fold over. So you'll see me put it back flat and kind of work it back. Okay, this is called black heat right here. I'm really not moving a lot of metal. This will burn the fire out of you, but it's not hot enough to really manipulate that easily. So it goes back to the fire. I could have got a bigger hammer, and I could have kept hammering, and I could fashion it. What if I was having to do 300 pieces like this that I needed a point on the end of it? I'd be wore out by the end of the day. And so the best thing to do is just heat it back up, use less effort to do what you need to do. A lot of people will have a misconception that blacksmiths got to be real big, strong, big guys, fat guys, whatever. That doesn't make me a blacksmith, but as long as the metal's hot, you can fashion the metal. I have a couple of lady friends that are blacksmiths in Texas, and they do some fantastic work, and they're little video things. see how quick that metal cooled off? Get a good point on it. My next step is I'm going to the Smith and Magician, and I'm going to start doing what we call fullering. I'm going to pinch that end down. So. Guessing where I want it, I'm going to put it there. I'm going to hit it a couple times. Turn it 180. Now I'm starting to fuller it down. The reason why I hit it 2 times and turn it 180, that's hand ground dies, so they're not really perfect. So by rotating it, we can get both sides to look fairly close. Go back one more time, fuller it a little bit more. When I come back to the forge, I'm going to shove this all the way through, about 8 inches through the fire, and I'm going to let it heat up, and then I'm going to come and I'm going to cut it off. Tell you a little bit about the coal, a little bit more about the coal. Once the impurities are burnt out of the coal, it goes into what is called coke. And coke is a real light material, but coke is what gives us our heat. And you'll see me picking up pieces around the edge. And you're wondering how in the world can it touch that hot stuff? You know, I would never do that in a barbecue pit. But when the coke forms and it falls outside, it cools off, you know. But also over the years, my hands have toughened up, and I love to go to a Mexican restaurant because they'll come out there, the plate's hot, and they set on the table. And I just pick it up and slide it over. I just can't believe that. My wife says, "Don't do that again, please." The heat is in the wrong place.
Is the forge in your shop deeper?
This is the forge that I use.
All the time?
Yeah.
That's cool.
I have another one that I'm going to incorporate as a stationary forge in my shop, but that's about as deep as it is. You don't want to go into the fire this way. You want to go into the fire in the middle of the coal, because that's kind of a neutral area where the oxygen is not real prevalent. Okay, I'm going to mark this. Also have a forge that's run by propane. I'm doing a lot of repetitive work, like if I'm making 6 bottle openers at one time, I'll use the propane forge. That way I don't have to worry about propane forge won't burn up the metal. So I don't have to worry about a bottle opener half finished and then burning up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reproduce another one of those fuller ends on the other end. So I'm going to bring a point. What I'm trying to do is flatten that end down. Also, a lot of people think there's not many blacksmiths around anymore. There is a lot of blacksmiths around, but there's not a lot of blacksmiths that make a living at it. Because it's so costly that people just won't pay you what you should get. I do work with a lady that does custom high-end furniture, and I do a lot of her special bases on her furniture. And I already see I have a crack right here, and it's never going to go away. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this off, because all I'll end up with is a flaw on the bottom. So I'm going to break off like this. Any questions? Any questions? All right. When I put this back in the fire, I'm looking down in that fire. When that piece of metal blends in with the color of the fire, I know it's hot enough to come out in food. That's where I'm at right here. Wondering why I'm hammering, and then all of a sudden, when I'm not hitting on the metal, I'm tapping on the anvil. That's to help keep my rhythm. bit smaller than the other. What I'm doing now is I'm just tarnishing and trying to get everything straight, kind of where I want it. Not really moving a lot of metal, just taking out any imperfections out.
What are imperfections?
What's that?
What's considered an imperfection? Is it like something that's not metal or?
No, it may have a little dip in it
Oh.
compared to the other side.
Okay.
Some people that do or supposedly do blacksmith work, they do sloppy work, and they say that's blacksmithing. Blacksmithing is not sloppy work. Blacksmithing is doing transforming a piece of metal into a useful object, but they're doing it as good as you can. And there's nothing wrong with putting it in the bison, using the file to clean it up.
So, the size of the machine that you're breaking?
Here,
Yes.
it's a blower.
Just give it.
Yeah, it's got a fan wheel on it, and as I turn it, it blows air into the bottom, and that increases the burn on the tool. Something else as a blacksmith you learn very quickly that when something starts falling, don't try to grab it. I mean, that's a natural tendency we have. You know, you're in the kitchen and you drop, you reach to try to catch it, you know. Blacksmithing, that's almost a no. Okay, for this to be a good handle, I have to put some bends in it because you can't grab it if you attach it to the wall, okay? With the same tools that I'm using to make this big old handle, you can make little handles. That's done with that big old hammer right there. I wouldn't use the Smith's Magician on it, I'd just flip it right there.
Pipe came undone.
No wonder stuff getting hot. Guess what I'll have fixed before next Saturday? What happens once that hose starts to get hot, it kind of wants to expand and slip over there. Right now, in preparation of the curve, I'm going to bend this so that when I put the curve in, So now you can see how I've got it. My next move is to heat this in and to bend that, and that'll get that in. Come on in, come on in. Too high there, so what did I say earlier? I'm faster than that. Heat it up, I'm gonna beat it in this fish. Once again, I'm looking down in that fire, waiting for that metal to get red, just like the coal. Then I'll know it'll be ready to go ahead and to get what I need. And you gotta, whenever you brush your blacksmith stuff, you gotta use a real fine wire brush. You were supposed to laugh, but that's not a fine wire brush. All right. That makes the demo halfway decent when you have a reaction. There are motorcycles in here. So on this particular handle, if I wanted it to be a fancy handle, I'd have done chisel work on it before I bent it. I could have chiseled lines down the side, could have put some chisel marks across or whatever. But most of the time during the colonial period, they weren't looking for beautiful stuff, they were looking for functional stuff. And so once we punched the holes in here, this handle's ready to go. It's ready to put on. But they also did use, they used some finishes on there because that's just carbon steel and it's gonna eventually rust. So the old blacksmith learned that if he carbonized beeswax on something, that it had a tendency not to rust as easily. So while it's still hot, we can put beeswax on it. And it's much similar to like seasoning a cast iron pot. And then when it carbonizes, it turns black. So a lot of traditional old pieces of blacksmith items are black. And that's the reason why. They either put it on the fire when they put new coal on and got the coal tar off as the coal purified. It would emit coal tar. They'd get a coal tar finish on it.
You have to get the excess wax off your handle.
Yeah, sometimes it'll eventually just go off. I should have a rag with me, but guess what? little wet, but it's not hot. You can pass it around. It's hot. Some of the objects that you see on the table, this is vegetable choppers. That started out as a piece of flat bar, cut, and then drawn out and hammered out and then sanded a little bit to get the cutting edge. This is another example of a hinge, and it's a lap hinge. And the reason it's a lap hinge is once it bolted to the door, this would not open up, so the pin that would support the door could not open this up and begin to sag on it. Everybody know what this is? It's a steak turner. Whenever you're grilling that $14.99 T-bone pound, you hook it, pick it up, and swing it. When you swing it, you do like that, and then it turns it over. Everybody know what this is? Okay, it's a trimmer. Whenever you cook in an open hearth fireplace or on a campfire, how do you regulate your heat? You have your pot hanging here, it's down here, it's on simmer. You want to kind of speed up the cooking, you pull this out, you let this down, it brings the pot closer to the fire. Normally these are about 2 foot long, but for demonstration purposes, I just have a mini version. Okay. This is all traditional. There's no welding or anything on here. So all it was metal, forge, hammer, and anvil that accomplished the feat of making this. Some things, like these pine cones, I have to say they're artistic blacksmithing done, because I did use an acetylene torch to do some fine welding on the pine cones. Does this look like pine cones?
Yes.
Yeah. An hour and a half to make one pine cone. So if I do you a fireplace screen that has 10 pine cones on it, and the fireplace screen is 3 foot by 4 foot, how much should I charge for that?
A lot.
A lot. Did you get to see it? You saw it? All right.
He thinks I don't know how to share.
What?
So he thinks I don't know how to share.
Oh. All right. About all the time I have, because we're going to be concluding in about 15 minutes, is
Will you show next week how you actually punch the hole in there? Because
yes, next week I'm gonna be doing a horsehead bottle opener, and I'll have 3/4 inch material, 3/4 wide, 3/16 thick, and I'm gonna punch a 3/4 hole in that 3/4 material.
That sounds interesting.
Hey, hey. If you want to see, let me do that right now. I'm gonna hot punch. I don't know what I did with that bracket. What did I do with that handle? When you get old, you can't remember stuff. Back in the 1700s, there's a plantation in Alexandria called the Kent House Plantation. It's on Rapid Bayou Road. Plantation was actually started, the construction of it was in 1790. It was finished in 1805, I believe. It's the only wooden structure in Alexandria that the Yankees didn't burn down when they come through Alexandria. And it's been preserved. And so way back then, they didn't have a blower like this. They had a bellows. In the blacksmith shop there's a bellows. I built a big bellows for them. We don't use it too much because it's too much work. It's a lot easier to turn this, you know. But also when it comes to like drilling holes and different things, they didn't have a drill or anything like that, so they had to hot punch them. And I'm going to demo how that takes place.
Under normal circumstances, would you put the wax on after you already punched the holes?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, because that's burning the wax back off right now. And it would normally do it when it's completely flat. Because when I punched it, the first side, I can hold the tongs with my legs. I've lost my hammer. You have to have your tools ready to go whenever you get to the end. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and I'm going to kind of eyeball it where I want the hole. I'm just going to kind of just slightly mark it because I've already cooled off. But I know exactly now, so when I go back, I can hit it right where I need to hit it. Okay, I heard it making a different sound. I'm going to turn it over, and there's a black ring right there where that hole's at. It left the slug in it, so I'm going to reheat it, and then I'm going to drive the slug out. What I'm calling the slug is the piece of metal that I'm punching out. When I was hammering it the first time, I was listening until that metal bottomed out, and I could tell a different sound of the hit. Then when I turned it over, right where I had that center punch at, it cooled that metal off, so it left a black circle. So I knew when I turned it over, if I punched right in that center of that black circle, I would be right in line with the hole that I had already started. Okay, I got to get my punch ready.
You can't hot punch just one ring.
You can. Sometimes it leaves what we call a rag when the metal comes through. If you don't have an exact, precise hole, then it drags the inside out with it. So. I'm over the Pritchett hole on the anvil. I think I am. Alright, let's see what we got. I thought I saw the slug fly, but I'm not sure. Yeah. Go ahead and I'll punch the other side.
Have you ever trained any apprentices?
What's that?
Have you trained apprentices?
Trained apprentices. I really don't do apprenticeship, but I do private tutoring. And I work with special needs children sometimes. I had one student, he had, I believe it's called Asperger's. Very intelligent young man, but if you get him around 3 people, he'd get in the corner. He couldn't stand to be with the crowd. So I invited Gage to come to my shop, and I worked with him one-on-one. And the whole time trying to encourage him. That you can do it, I know you can do it. I helped build a forge for him. But he was very, very mechanically inclined for him. For y'all that weren't here earlier, I do teach for McNeese State University, leisure learning classes at my home, which is about 25 miles from Lake Charles. But I can't haul 8 animals to Lake Charles once a week to teach, and they wouldn't give me a studio, so I just have it. This animal here is about an 85 to 95 pounds. I have them anywhere from 30 pounds up to 300. I have 18 big animals. Yes, I'm bragging.
I would too.
It's hard to find animals. I get asked all the time, where do you find animals? I said, I find them all over. Everywhere I go, I talk blacksmith. You heard that extra sound? This is the black spot I was telling you about. But I did something I shouldn't have been doing is I let my tools stay in there and pick up too much heat. So I've lost the temper on this problem. Doesn't really concern me much because I can retemper it, reharden it, retemper it. A lot of people ask me about heat treating different things. If you have high carbon steel, you're making a knife, you have to harden it, then you have to temper it. To harden a piece of carbon steel, high carbon steel, you have to heat it up to 1420 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay? I don't have a barometer in my shop. To show you how God works in creation of nature, at 1420 degrees, high carbon steel becomes non-magnetic. So in my forge, I'm pulling it in and out, checking it with a magnet. Whenever the magnet doesn't stick to the work edge, then I quench. Okay. Well, now I need to. Let's go on this side and make that black. To temper the metal now, after I've hardened it, I need to bring it up to a temperature of 500 degrees. I don't have a barometer in my shop, so how do I know when it's 500 degrees? You go by the oxidation colors. If you ever heated up a piece of metal, you'll see it turn purple and kind of turquoise and gold colors. That's oxidation. It's kind of ironic, but at 500 degrees, the oxidation color is, we call it straw. So if this was a cutting edge and I hardened it, I wouldn't quench it till it was completely cool. I'd quench, take the resin, a lot of the heat out, and I'd shine it up. Then I would hold it and let the heat rise on it, and I'd watch the temper colors. And when it got to straw, then I'd quench it again. That would be 500 degrees. So what that did, it was, first I made the metal as hard as it could be, but it was real brittle like glass. So by backing it back down, it enabled it to have a shock factor. In other words, I could hit on it and, like a knife, if you were going to cut a piece of wood, if you hit it with a hammer or something. I don't know how many of y'all watch Forged in Fire. It's a blacksmithing show that's on TV, and it's a challenge, you know. You have to make a knife in 3 hours and different things like that. What they don't show you is on behind the scenes, they temper all those knives and everything. I've had 3 friends that have been on Forged in Fire, and did you want to hold it? Wow. That's neat, huh? Yeah. It's just like a drill. But you see, that metal right there is about 3/16 of an inch thick. That slug that come out of there was less than a 1/16 of an inch. And what it did is, as it punched, it actually flared it out to the side some. This day and time, that's not a big benefit, but in the old times, you wanted to save every bit of metal that you could save. It's hard to get. You know, we talk about recycling. The blacksmith back then recycled a lot because there just wasn't that much steel around. Now, as we got into the 1900s and things became more available, then we could do that. All right. Is there any questions?
You ever reached out and grabbed something and it was hot?
I told them a while ago, people ask me that all the time, do you ever burn yourself? If I don't burn myself at least one time when I'm in my shop working, per day, it's not a successful day. Something I've learned, and I thought one of my blacksmith buddies from College Station was pulling my leg. He said, if you ever burn yourself, he says, take some pine tar, rub on it, and he said, you'll be surprised what it does. Pine tar, you can buy it at the feed store. They use it to repair hooves on horses. It's cheap. It's like graphite. You get one little bit on you, it's all over you. But I found out if I picked up something temporarily, and I burnt the end of my fingers, I could rub it on there, just leave it on there, and clean it off later in the day. The next day will look just like a callus. It won't be a big blister. I was heat treating some tools for a guy, and the fire got away from me, and my quenching oil caught on fire, spilled in my shop. So I didn't want my shop to burn down, so I grabbed the bucket it was in and I threw it outside, and I burnt my arm right here, 3rd-degree burns. I wasn't worried about it. I didn't want my shop to burn down.
Yeah.
So in quenching fluid, it has additives in it that if you reduce the heat, the fire go out. You'll hear every day, don't use water on oil to put out. Well, quenching fluid you can. So I got the hose, I washed it out, put the fire out. And I just immediately went to my cabinet, took my pine tar, and I just rubbed it all over my arm right here. And went to the house. Was going to soak it in ice. Didn't have enough ice. Called friends. They brought ice. Da 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 da. I can show you my arm right now. There's no scars on it.
Wow.
All my hair is growing in every place on my arm that had hair before. So whether pine tar works or not for some people, it works for me. Of course, there were some prayers going up too. Because I've seen people that have gotten burned that severely, and their skin's all wrinkled up or scarred up. And, all I can say is, thank goodness to pine tar. All right, that's going to conclude the demo today. I will